He was born on January the 27th, 1859, with a withered left arm 15 centimeters shorter than his right, the result of nerve damage sustained during a traumatic 24-hour breech birth at the Crown Prince's Palace in Potsdam, Prussia. He became Kaiser of Germany on June 15, 1888, at the age of 29, after his father, Friedrich III, died of throat cancer after only 99 days on the throne. He ruled 67 million people for exactly 30 years. He fired Otto von Bismarck, the architect of unified Germany, in March 1890 after only 20 months of joint rule. He signed the blank check to Austria-Hungary on July 5, 1914, that triggered a war killing 20 million people. He abdicated on November 9, 1918, fled to the Netherlands, and died on June 4, 1941, aged 82, having never faced a single day of accountability. His name was Kaiser Wilhelm II, and the question history cannot stop asking about him is this: was he a dangerous genius who knew exactly what he was doing, or a deeply damaged man whose personal insecurities killed millions of people who never knew his name? Friedrich Wilhelm Victor Albert was born at 3 p.m. on January 27, 1859, in the Crown Prince's Palace in Potsdam, Prussia, the first child of Crown Prince Friedrich of Prussia and Princess Victoria, the eldest daughter of Queen Victoria of Britain. He was, from the moment of his birth, one of the most politically significant infants in Europe. His maternal grandmother was the queen of the most powerful empire on earth. His paternal grandfather was Wilhelm I, King of Prussia and future first Kaiser of the newly unified German Empire. The child born in that palace on that January afternoon stood to inherit a position of extraordinary power. What he inherited alongside it was a permanent physical disability that would shape every decision he made for the next 82 years of his life. The nerve damage to his left arm, caused by the traumatic breech delivery that lasted approximately 24 hours, was diagnosed as Erb's palsy, a condition affecting the brachial plexus nerve network running from the neck into the arm. His left arm developed at a significantly reduced rate compared to his right, eventually measuring approximately 15 centimeters shorter at full growth. The arm had severely limited mobility, could not be raised above shoulder height without mechanical assistance, and had almost no practical gripping strength. For a child born into the Prussian military aristocracy, a culture that valued physical strength and martial bearing above virtually every other quality, this disability was not merely a medical inconvenience. It was a social and psychological catastrophe. His parents, particularly his mother Victoria, responded to the disability with a combination of genuine concern and brutal therapeutic intervention that modern child psychologists would recognize immediately as deeply damaging. Beginning when Wilhelm was approximately 3 years old, doctors subjected him to a series of treatments designed to force development into the withered arm. These included galvanic electrical stimulation applied directly to the arm muscles 3 times per week, the wearing of a mechanical brace that locked his left hand onto the mane of a horse to force him to ride without using his right arm for balance, and a procedure called animal baths in which the arm was inserted into the freshly slaughtered carcass of a hare 3 times per week, with the animal's body heat meant to stimulate circulation and nerve growth. None of these treatments produced meaningful physical improvement. All of them produced measurable psychological damage in a child already acutely aware that his body did not meet the standards of the world he had been born into. His education, which began formally around age 7 under a tutor named Georg Hinspeter, was equally relentless. Hinspeter was a man of rigid Calvinist beliefs who subscribed to the philosophy that children were improved through difficulty rather than encouragement. He taught Wilhelm for approximately 8 years, between 1866 and 1874, with a curriculum that covered Latin, Greek, French, English, mathematics, history, and the natural sciences, all delivered at a pace and intensity designed for an adult rather than a child. Hinspeter later wrote that Wilhelm was an average student who required constant pressure to perform, a judgment that Wilhelm himself bitterly disputed for the rest of his life. What Hinspeter's teaching produced was not an educated statesman, but a man with a profound sensitivity to criticism, a desperate need for external validation, and a lifelong pattern of compensating for perceived inadequacy through dramatic assertions of strength and authority. At the age of 15, in 1874, Wilhelm was sent to the gymnasium at Kassel, a public school where for the first time in his life, he was educated alongside approximately 130 boys who were not his social equals and who treated him with something close to ordinary human interaction. Rather than courtly deference, he spent 3 years at Kassel from 1874 to 1877, and by most accounts genuinely enjoyed the experience. He then attended the University of Bonn for 4 terms between 1877 and 1879, studying law and political science without distinction, but with evident enthusiasm for the social dimensions of university life. In 1881, at the age of 22, he married Princess Augusta Victoria of Schleswig-Holstein, known as Donna, a woman of deeply conservative religious beliefs who would bear him 7 children over the next 12 years, 6 sons and 1 daughter. Between 1882 and 1892, the marriage was stable and genuinely affectionate, providing Wilhelm with a domestic security that stood in sharp contrast to the turbulence of his political and psychological life. His father, Friedrich III, became Kaiser on March 9, 1888, already dying of throat cancer that had been diagnosed the previous year. He reigned for exactly 99 days, dying on June 15, 1888, at the age of 56. On that same day, June 15, 1888, Wilhelm became Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany at the age of 29. He inherited command of an army of approximately 400,000 active soldiers, a navy of 80 warships, an empire of 67 million people, generating an industrial economy that was at that moment overtaking Britain as the largest in Europe, and a constitutional structure designed by Otto von Bismarck that concentrated enormous executive power in the hands of the Kaiser while maintaining a parliament called the Reichstag with limited but real legislative authority. He also inherited Bismarck himself, the 73-year-old architect of German unification, who had served as Chancellor since 1862 and who had no intention of accepting direction from a 29-year-old emperor who had been on the throne for less than a week. The collision between these 2 men was the first and most consequential expression of the clash between Wilhelm's personal need for dominance and the political reality of governing a complex modern state. Otto von Bismarck had served as Chancellor of Prussia and then of the unified German Empire since October 1862, a period of 28 years during which he had engineered 3 wars, unified 39 German states into a single nation, and constructed a diplomatic network of 5 major alliances and treaties that kept Germany secure and Europe broadly stable. By 1888, when Wilhelm became Kaiser, Bismarck was 73 years old, increasingly deaf, frequently ill, and completely unwilling to surrender the executive authority he had accumulated over nearly 3 decades. He had operated under Wilhelm I, an elderly and largely deferential Kaiser who trusted Bismarck almost completely. He had survived the 99-day reign of Friedrich III. He expected to manage Wilhelm II in the same way he had managed his predecessors, through a combination of superior knowledge, political manipulation, and the sheer weight of his historical reputation. He badly miscalculated the young Kaiser's determination to rule personally rather than through intermediaries. The conflict between the two men escalated rapidly through 1889 and the first months of 1890, driven by 3 specific disagreements that were in reality expressions of a single deeper incompatibility. The first disagreement concerned labor policy. In January 1890, Wilhelm proposed convening an international conference in Berlin of 14 European nations to discuss workers' rights, minimum wage standards, and limits on working hours, a progressive initiative that Bismarck opposed as dangerously radical and likely to encourage socialist political organization. The conference eventually took place on March 15th and 16th, 1890, attended by representatives of 14 nations, but by that point, Bismarck was already gone. The second disagreement concerned the renewal of the anti-socialist laws, legislation first passed in 1878 that banned socialist political organization within Germany. Bismarck wanted the laws renewed and strengthened. Wilhelm, calculating that conciliation was more effective than repression, refused. The third and most fundamental disagreement concerned the structure of power itself. Bismarck had established a practice of requiring all Prussian ministers to communicate with the Kaiser only through him, effectively making himself the sole channel of political information reaching the throne. Wilhelm, who had been told his entire life that he was the supreme authority in Germany, found this arrangement intolerable. On March 17, 1890, after a final confrontation in which both men exchanged written memoranda accusing each other of constitutional violations, Wilhelm II dismissed Otto von Bismarck as Chancellor of Germany. Bismarck was 75 years old. He had served for 28 years. He left Berlin on March 29, 1890, on a train watched by a crowd of approximately 10,000 people who came to see him off, many of them weeping. Wilhelm, who had engineered the dismissal with cold determination, sent him a portrait of himself and a case of wine as a farewell gift. The symbolism was not lost on European observers, who understood immediately that something fundamental had changed in how Germany would be governed. What followed the dismissal was 24 years of escalating foreign policy catastrophe, driven by Wilhelm's personal interventions, his advisors' inability to constrain him, and the structural consequences of destroying Bismarck's carefully constructed diplomatic architecture. Bismarck's system had rested on a single foundational principle: keep France isolated by maintaining Germany's relationships with Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Britain simultaneously, preventing any combination of powers that could threaten Germany on 2 fronts at once. The instrument of the Russian relationship was the Reinsurance Treaty of 1887, a secret agreement between Germany and Russia pledging mutual neutrality in the event either was attacked by a third party. In June 1890, just 3 months after dismissing Bismarck, Wilhelm's new chancellor, Leo von Caprivi, allowed the Reinsurance Treaty to lapse without renewal, judging it incompatible with Germany's simultaneous alliance with Austria-Hungary. Bismarck, watching from retirement, called this decision the greatest diplomatic blunder in German history. He was right. Within 2 years, by January 1894, Russia had signed a military convention with France, exactly the two-front alliance that Bismarck's entire diplomatic system had been designed to prevent. Germany was now potentially encircled. Wilhelm made the situation dramatically worse through a series of personal interventions between 1894 and 1914 that combined strategic recklessness with almost complete indifference to their consequences. In July 1896, he sent the Kruger telegram, a congratulatory message to Paul Kruger, President of the Transvaal Republic in South Africa, after Boer forces defeated the British Jameson raid. The telegram, which implied German support for Boer independence against British imperialism, caused an immediate and severe deterioration in Anglo-German relations and pushed Britain toward closer alignment with France. In 1905 and again in 1911, Wilhelm intervened directly in the Moroccan crisis, twice attempting to challenge French expansion in North Africa by asserting German interests in the region. The first Moroccan crisis of 1905 to 1906, which Wilhelm triggered by landing at Tangier on March 31, 1905, and publicly declaring support for Moroccan independence, resulted in the Algeciras Conference of January to April 1906, attended by 13 nations, at which Germany received support only from Austria-Hungary, while every other major power backed France. The Second Moroccan Crisis of 1911, triggered by the German deployment of the gunboat Panther to the Moroccan port of Agadir on July 1, 1911, produced another humiliating diplomatic defeat and pushed Britain and France into military staff talks that effectively pre-committed them to joint action in any future European war. By 1907, the diplomatic isolation that Wilhelm's policies had created was formalized in the Triple Entente, an alignment of France, Russia, and Britain that directly countered the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Germany's one reliable ally was Austria-Hungary, an empire of 52 million people whose internal ethnic divisions made it structurally fragile and whose military capacity was significantly weaker than Germany's own. Italy, the third member of the Triple Alliance, had negotiated secret clauses with France that effectively guaranteed Italian neutrality in any war Germany started, a fact German planners understood but could not publicly acknowledge. Wilhelm had taken Bismarck's diplomatically secure Germany, surrounded by 5 carefully managed relationships, and replaced it with an isolated Germany dependent on one genuinely reliable partner facing a coalition of 3 of the world's major senior powers. The stage for the catastrophe of 1914 was not set by a single decision, but by 24 years of systematic diplomatic self-destruction, driven by one man's inability to separate his personal need for dominance from the national interest he was supposed to serve. At 11:15 a.m. on June 28, 1914, in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb nationalist named Gavrilo Princip fired 2 shots from a distance of approximately 1.5 meters into the open car carrying Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife, Sophie. Franz Ferdinand was 50 years old. Sophie was 46. Both died within the hour. Princip was one of 7 assassins positioned along the Archduke's motorcade route that morning, organized by a Serbian nationalist organization called the Black Hand, whose connections to the Serbian military intelligence apparatus had been known to Austro-Hungarian authorities for months. The assassination was the trigger. The explosive it ignited had been accumulating for 24 years, stacked layer by layer through every diplomatic failure, every broken alliance, and every personal intervention by Kaiser Wilhelm II since the dismissal of Bismarck in March 1890. Wilhelm was on his annual summer cruise aboard his yacht Hohenzollern in the Norwegian fjords when he received news of the assassination. He returned immediately to Berlin, arriving on July 1st, 1914. On July 4th, 1914, he received the Austro-Hungarian ambassador, Count Songhai, for lunch at the New Palace in Potsdam. The following day, July 5th, 1914, Wilhelm met with Austrian emissary Count Hoyos and conveyed what historians have since called the blank check, a verbal and written assurance that Germany would support Austria-Hungary with the full weight of its military power, regardless of what action Vienna chose to take against Serbia. The written confirmation came in a letter from German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg to the Austro-Hungarian government on the same day. The letter contained 127 words. Those 127 words committed 67 million Germans to war. Wilhelm's precise understanding of what he was authorizing has been debated by historians for more than a century. Some scholars, including the German historian Fritz Fischer, whose 1961 book Griff nach der Weltmacht argued that Germany deliberately engineered the war as a calculated bid for European hegemony, have argued that Wilhelm understood exactly what the blank check meant and issued it as part of a premeditated strategy. Others have argued that Wilhelm genuinely believed Austria-Hungary would conduct a rapid, limited, punitive operation against Serbia lasting no more than a few weeks, that Russia would back down rather than risk a general European war, and that the crisis would be resolved without triggering the full machinery of the European alliance system. What is not debated is that Wilhelm issued the guarantee on July 5th, then immediately departed on another sailing holiday in Norwegian waters, leaving his government to manage the consequences of a decision whose implications he had spent approximately 24 hours considering. The consequences unfolded with mechanical, terrifying speed over the next 30 days. On July 23, 1914, Austria-Hungary delivered an ultimatum to Serbia containing 10 demands, deliberately designed to be unacceptable, giving Serbia only 48 hours to respond. Serbia accepted 9 of the 10 demands and proposed international arbitration on the 10th. Austria-Hungary, supported by Germany's blank check, rejected the response as insufficient on July 25, 1914, and began partial mobilization of its army of approximately 3.35 million men. Russia, which had 4.5 million mobilized soldiers at full strength and considered itself the protector of Slavic peoples, including Serbia, began preparatory military measures on July 25th and ordered full mobilization of its 1,400,000 frontline troops on July 30th, 1914. Germany issued an ultimatum to Russia on July 31st, demanding demobilization within 12 hours. Russia did not respond. Germany declared war on Russia on August 1st, 1914, at 7:10 p.m. On August 3rd, 1914, Germany declared war on France, activating the Schlieffen Plan, a military strategy developed between 1905 and 1906 by Chief of Staff Alfred von Schlieffen that required Germany to defeat France within 42 days through a massive flanking attack through neutral Belgium before turning its full military force eastward against Russia. The German army that crossed into Belgium on August 4, 1914, consisted of approximately 1.5 million soldiers organized into 7 armies, advancing on a front of approximately 300 kilometers. Britain declared war on Germany at 11 p.m. on August 4, 1914, citing the violation of Belgian neutrality guaranteed by the 1839 Treaty of London, to which both Britain and Prussia were signatories. Within 6 days of Germany's declaration of war on Russia, every major European power was at war. The conflict that Wilhelm's blank check had helped ignite would last exactly 1,568 days, consume the lives of approximately 20 million people, including 10 million military casualties and 10 million civilians, wound approximately 21 million more, and displace an estimated 7 million refugees across a continent that would not fully recover for a generation. Wilhelm's personal role in the war's military direction was considerably less significant than his role in starting it. German military strategy was dominated by the General Staff, first under Helmuth von Moltke the Younger, and then after September 1914 under Erich von Falkenhayn, and finally Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff from August 1916. By 1916, the real governing power in Germany had effectively passed to Hindenburg and Ludendorff, who between them commanded 5.5 million soldiers and made strategic decisions with minimal reference to the Kaiser. Wilhelm attended military briefings, signed documents, and appeared in public in military uniform, but the three men who actually directed Germany's war effort between 1916 and 1918 were Hindenburg, Ludendorff, and Bethmann Hollweg, not the Kaiser, who had nominally been their supreme commander since June 15, 1888. The man who had fired Bismarck because he refused to share power had, by 1917, become largely ceremonial in the institution he had spent 29 years insisting was his personal domain. By the autumn of 1918, the German Empire was collapsing on every front simultaneously. On the Western Front, the failure of the Spring Offensive of March to July 1918, which had committed 192 divisions and approximately 3.5 million German soldiers in a final attempt to break the Allied lines before American reinforcements arrived in decisive numbers, had exhausted Germany's last strategic reserves. Between March 21st and July 18th, 1918, Germany had suffered approximately 688,000 casualties in those offensives, losses that could not be replaced. By September 1918, the Allied counter-offensive known as the 100 Days Offensive launched on August 8, 1918, with 15 Allied divisions and approximately 600 tanks at Amiens, was pushing the German army back at a rate of several kilometers per day across a front of more than 200 kilometers. Bulgaria signed an armistice on September 29, 1918. The Ottoman Empire followed on October 30, 1918. Austria-Hungary collapsed on November 3, 1918. Germany stood alone, its army retreating, its navy mutinying, its cities gripped by revolution. The naval mutiny began at Kiel on October 29, 1918, when approximately 1,000 sailors of the German High Seas Fleet refused orders to sail on what they correctly understood to be a suicidal final engagement against the British Royal Navy. Within 72 hours, the mutiny had spread to 40,000 sailors across the fleet. By November 3, 1918, workers' and soldiers' councils modeled on the Russian-Soviet system had been established in 7 major German cities, including Hamburg, Bremen, and Cologne. On November 7, 1918, revolution reached Munich, where the Bavarian King Ludwig III was deposed, becoming the first German monarch to fall. On November 9, 1918, revolution reached Berlin. At 9 a.m. on November 9th, Chancellor Max von Baden announced Wilhelm's abdication without the Kaiser's explicit consent, judging that the announcement itself was the only thing that might prevent a full Bolshevik-style revolution from consuming the German capital within hours. Wilhelm, who was at the Supreme Headquarters in Spa, Belgium, received the news by telephone. He had not abdicated. His Chancellor had done it for him. Wilhelm spent the night of November 9th to 10th, 1918, at Spa in a state of furious indecision, surrounded by approximately 50 staff officers and personal attendants. At 7:30 a.m. on November 10, 1918, he boarded a train of 15 carriages and crossed the Dutch border at 𝙎ᴜᴜ at approximately 10:15 a.m., entering the Netherlands as a private citizen without formal diplomatic preparation or prior arrangement with the Dutch government. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, who received less than 3 hours' notice of his arrival, granted him temporary asylum under significant protest from the Allied powers. He was 59 years old. He had been Kaiser for exactly 30 years, 4 months, and 25 days. He carried with him approximately 23 personal trunks of belongings, a small staff of 17 attendants, and no plan for what came next. Article 227 of the Treaty of Versailles, signed on June 28, 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, publicly arraigned Wilhelm II for supreme offense against international morality and the sanctity of treaties, and called for his extradition to face trial before a special international tribunal of 5 judges, one each from Britain, France, the United States, Italy, and Japan. The Allied powers formally requested his extradition from the Netherlands on January 16, 1920. The Dutch, a government, citing both the absence of an extradition treaty covering political offences and the principle that the Netherlands could not surrender a man who had sought asylum in good faith, refused the request on November 21, 1920. Wilhelm would never stand trial. He would never be formally held accountable for the 20 million deaths, the 21 million wounded, the 4 destroyed empires, and the political conditions that his decisions between 1890 and 1914 had helped create. He settled at 𝙎ᴜᴜ, a modest estate of 62 hectares in the Dutch province of Utrecht, which he purchased in August 1920 for approximately 1.2 million Dutch guilders. He lived there for the remaining 21 years of his life with a staff of approximately 60 servants, a personal library of more than 20,000 books, and a daily routine that included chopping wood, which he performed with his right arm in quantities that his staff recorded reaching 28,000 logs in a single year, a compulsive physical activity that many biographers have interpreted as a lifelong attempt to demonstrate strength in the body that his withered left arm had always made him feel denied. His first wife, Augusta Victoria, died at dawn on April 11, 1921, age 62. Wilhelm remarried on November 5, 1922, wedding Princess Hermine of Reuss, who was 34 years old to his 63, and who would remain with him until his death. The rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany produced in Wilhelm a response that perfectly illustrated the moral bankruptcy at the center of his character. When Hitler was appointed Chancellor on January 30, 1933, Wilhelm sent a congratulatory telegram from Dawn expressing his hope that the new government would restore Germany to greatness. When German forces conquered France in June 1940, Wilhelm sent Hitler a telegram of congratulation that read, "Congratulations, you have won using my troops." The man who had helped create the conditions for the first catastrophic European war of the 20th century was, celebrating the opening victories of the second, he expressed private reservations about specific Nazi policies, particularly the November 1938 Kristallnacht pogrom against Jewish Germans, in which approximately 7,500 Jewish businesses were destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. But these private reservations produced no public statement, no moral intervention, and no meaningful action of any kind. On June 4, 1941, at 11:30 a.m., Kaiser Wilhelm II died at 𝙎ᴜᴜ at the age of 82 from a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs. He had been in declining health since early 1941 and died within hours of his final deterioration, He had expressed a wish to be buried in Germany if the monarchy was restored, and since no such restoration occurred, he was buried in a mausoleum constructed on the grounds of Ḥuisdorn on June 9, 1941, attended by a German military honor guard sent by Adolf Hitler, who had ordered that the funeral be conducted with full imperial honors. Approximately 200 people attended the ceremony. Hitler himself did not attend, sending instead a wreath with a personal dedication. The last Kaiser of Germany was buried not in his homeland, but on a 62-hectare Dutch estate, in a ceremony presided over by the regime whose rise his failures had made possible, mourned by 200 people in a country he had ruled for 30 years and helped lead into a war that killed 20 million of its soldiers and citizens. The question of Wilhelm's personal responsibility for the First World War has never been fully settled, and the honest answer is that it was never going to be. He was not the sole cause of a war produced by 24 years of interlocking decisions, structural pressures, alliance commitments, and individual failures across 6 major powers. But he was the single individual who, more than any other, had the power to prevent it, and repeatedly chose not to use that power in the service of peace. He fired the man who might have kept the peace. He signed the document that made the war inevitable. He departed on sailing holiday, while the machinery of catastrophe ran without him. And when it was over, when 20 million people were dead and 4 empires had fallen, and the political conditions for a second and even more destructive war had been created, he chopped wood in the Netherlands, congratulated Hitler, and died in his bed at 82. The clash between power and morality that defined his life did not resolve itself at his death. It continued in the world his decisions had shaped, killing millions more people who never knew his name.